What's going on, Cover Killer Nation? Your favorite bastard of the music business is back for another new album review. This is one that just came out this past Tuesday and may actually be target to a lot of you mad bro references, even though I'm really not going to use all that much anger in this video. Spoiler alert. This is going to be American Capitalist by Five Finger Death Punch. Now, if you happen to be hiding under a rock or decided to go into a bomb shelter over the past 5 or so years, you probably have missed the fact that Five Finger Death Punch has become one of the biggest American quote-unquote metal or hard rock bands. It's in existence right now. These are one of these bands that you're going to hear all over the radio, and a lot of people really fell in love with. And most of the time, it's been because of the singles that they had on their previous two albums, such as War's the Answer and The Bleeding and The Way of the Fist. Those are the other three records that they have. But they gained a lot of attention with their cover of Bad Company's self-titled song, Bad Company, which appeared on the last record special edition format, and eventually was kind of branched into their standard formats as well. Now, because of that, they gained a really significant fan base, whether it be from new age crowds or the old age crowds that heard this remake of the song and just really enjoyed it. So with American Capitalist, the first thing a lot of people might be looking for is there going to be another cover on here? Are they going to continue this? On the standard edition, no. On the bonus edition, I don't know, because I just went with the standard edition because, quite honestly, Five Finger Death Punch is a band that never really clicked for me. I mean, their stuff is tolerable and actually is, in some ways, fairly decent, but at the same time, I have a lot of other bands that I'm a little bit more, accepting of. However, for the purposes of this video, I listened to the record and I'm going to be as impartial as I possibly can. And we all know that whenever that comes with me, that comes with strings attached, however it's going to be done. Now, American Capitalist is, of course, a very large follow-up. It's one that has been desperately anticipated by a very wide audience. It's also been desperately anticipated by record stores, Walmarts, and places like that, because this is a hot-button item for the hard rock / metal department. And so whenever it was released on Tuesday, this is obviously a very big deal. A lot of people wanted to see what these guys were going to be able to do to follow it up. And I, for one, actually was curious myself, because the Bad Company cover that I mentioned previously, I liked it. I thought that was a really nice throwback to the 1970s Bad Company song. So, in examining American Capitalist, the very first thing that I really noticed on this album is that their sound really has not made any noticeable shift. And for traditional fans, it's actually going to be really good. It's going to be a strength that this band's going to possess, because it's not going to be anything all that foreign. It's not going to be anything that they're not used to. So, in reality, this is a band that is continuing on in the direction of their musical evolution in a way in which their fans are going to maintain happiness, not to mention also, it's going to be new material for them to digest. So that's always been a good sign. Now, musically, for me, it seems as though some of these riffs can get a little bit trite, a little bit, tough metal guy, wins a plague bro type of style, but not in the deathcore variety, just something where everything is really geared towards trying to be as hard-edged and tough-nosed and, rugged as possible. That way, it can be, easily worked out to or something like that. The only difference is that it's not nearly as fuzzy, it's not nearly as dirty. This is something that's a little bit more polished and clean, very well produced, so you can kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about here. You're not going to necessarily hear things that are just going to make you think that they're really plugging through a distortion pedal and just going crazy on it, cranking it up to 615 and trying to make it as dusty and dirty as possible. Now, the one thing that I will majorly complain about on this record is in some of the tracks, the lyrics, and the lyrics are just abominable. The lyrics definitely have a lot of cliches in them. There's, in fact, one song that's all about, it's called The Pride, and it's all about, I'm guessing, like a lion's pride or something like that. I felt like I was listening to what should be the soundtrack to like a Jack Hanna movie or something like that, or if Jacques Cousteau was actually tracking fucking lines or some shit, this is exactly what he would be listening to in the background, that French bastard. Or is he Canadian? Who cares? But there's another song that actually rehashes each and every one of the previous album titles. And Megadeth did this with song titles on the song Victory. This was a number of albums ago, back on Euthanasia. However, this is something that whenever Five Finger Death Punch did it, it just seemed kind of like he was looking for a way to kind of wrap everything together and make it into a nice little package and give it, give the people something that they can, remember and things like that. Or have new fans kind of listen to that and be like, hey, this is the name of the other couple albums, I should go pick those up or something like that. And, I can understand the reason why they did that, and I can also understand that the lyric writing for that seems very appropriate. However, it just felt a little tacky. It really did feel a little tacky, and this is something that kind of plagues a lot of the album. It kind of brings it down a little bit, but you know what? Lyric writing for some people is just not necessarily a strength, for one. And for two, lyric writing should not determine whether or not an album is actually good, because some people, it's just not necessarily their strong point, and whenever they're a band that a lot of people respect anyway, it doesn't really matter. Plus, whenever you have simplistic lyrics, the one thing that you will kind of attain with that is that you'll have a nice fan base, because sometimes people don't want to listen to music that's going to be overly complex, dynamic, with these complex, you know, very cryptic messages embroidered within, because it's going to just confuse them. They're not going to know what you're really talking about, so it's very relatable for a lot of people. So that's something that Five Finger Death Punch, having some weak lyric writing, actually works as a strength as opposed to a weakness. Now, overall, this is a package that is going to have all the staples of very commercial American hard rock or heavy metal, whatever the hell you want to call it. That's really entirely in the ear of the beholder in this particular scenario. And overall, I think this album definitely has some strengths to it, where it is definitely different than some of the other more modern or classic rock, or more modern rock, should I say, not classic. Fuck no. Oh, anything but. That's not for another 20 years or so. But a lot of the modern rock that's out there today, I think that they definitely have a chord that they're striking, and they're continuing to show their audience that they are going to grow, but they're only going to do it in little baby steps. That way, it's not an idea that's going to become overly trite, overly predictable, but at the same time still maintain a lot of the staples that the fans are used to. That way they don't feel too distant from the product. So from a marketing standpoint, from a songwriting standpoint, these are all very good things. Now, I feel as though the music sometimes does get a little bit trite and repetitive. I'm not all that big on the whole, you know, tough guy rock thing, the whole tough guy lyric thing, you mad bro, winds of plague bro, Pantera bro. Love Pantera, but even I gotta say that Phil sometimes was a little bit of a, hey, let's go knock out some UFC, bro. That was back before UFC was even a big deal, but whatever, you know. I think the overall real strength of this album is going to be that the musicianship on here is going to be a little bit better than what you've noticed in some other acts of the more modern distinction. And it's really boiling down to the fact that this should be the shift in the musical landscape, where we're kind of moving away from what we had at the turn of the 2000s, where a lot of things were very three-chord heavy, as people called it. There was a very simplistic idea to the whole rock genre. And Five Finger Death Punch and bands that are willing to incorporate a little bit more of a stylistic flow to their music and a little bit more of a dynamic aspect to their music are really going to start thriving a little bit more. At least that's the hope. At least that's the hope. I cannot stress that point enough. So overall, this is an average album for me. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. In fact, I think a lot of people will find this to be a strong record, but for me, it's not my thing all that much. However, I gotta say that for all the people that thought I was going to shit all over this record, it's tolerable aside from the lyrics. So, what can I say? Sometimes the best surprises come whenever you least expect it, and I checked out this album, and I mean, overall, it wasn't that bad of an experience. So, if you're kind of on the fence about this band, if you're thinking that maybe this is something that you want to get into, give this album a shot. That kind of can be your first real exposure to the band, and if you end up liking what you hear, then continue on with your fandom. If you dislike what you hear, then I'm sorry I recommended it. So, that's about all I have for you guys today, Cover Killer Nation. Of course, check out the 2 contests that I posted in the video previous to this, and I will talk to you guys later.